Hello and welcome to More to the Story What the Abortion Industry Doesn't Want You to Know with Molly White. And I am so glad you joined me again today for another great episode. I know I say that every week, but hey, every week we have a great episode. And so I'm looking forward to introducing our guest. That'll do that in a couple of minutes. But before I do, like usual, I want to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Dr. Stephen Hotze with the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. We really appreciate his sponsorship. And I think I've said this time and time again. If you want to stay healthy like me, then I would encourage you to contact Hotze Health and Wellness Center and see what they can do to help you stay healthy and not get sick with all the things that are going around, especially. And now I would like to introduce my awesome co-host, Mary Browning. So, Mary, if you would come in and say hello, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Molly. Very good to see you. I'm excited about today's episode. And I do want to mention, as we usually do, that if you are listening today and you have an emotional reaction to some of the information you hear, it's possible that you um, may need to get some help. And you can do that by calling the H3 helpline, 866-721-7881. We call that emotional reaction a trigger, and it could be an invitation to another level of healing. You could also log on to operationoutcry.org, and there will be resources available there or places you can contact to find resources near you. So thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Mary. And we've had several guests on our show that have worked for Planned Parenthood. And we have talked for over a year now. Our desire is to expose the lies and deception of the abortion industry, especially the abortion giant of Planned Parenthood. And when we have an opportunity to get guests on that will help educate our viewers and our listeners about Planned Parenthood, it's awesome. And that's who we have today as our special guest. And I'm going to pull up her bio here real quick because I want to properly introduce her. This is Mayra Rodriguez. She is a former director of 3 Planned Parenthood clinics and was even named their 2016 Employee of the Year. In 2019, she became a courageous whistleblower. And I remember reading about this, but she was exposing the organization's misconduct and was awarded $3 million from a wrongful termination lawsuit. Now, Myra's mission is to expose the reality of how Planned Parenthood treats women, both their patients and employees. And she works to make abortion unthinkable by educating others on what the abortion industry doesn't want them to know. Her advocacy is rooted in a desire to protect every woman as she would her own daughter and to inspire others through a power of prayer and the divine mercy of Christ. And I could go on, but I just want to hurry up and bring our special guest, Mayra Rodriguez, into the show. So welcome, Mayra.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to talk to you about my story and just add my voice to this beautiful movement.
Amen. Amen. And then we have there's nothing more powerful than a testimony, right? Revelation 12:11 says that we overcome Satan by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And we know Satan is the great liar, deceiver, and murderer. And so when we expose that, we're really exposing him and stepping on his ugly head. And so we would like to just start off by saying, what just tell us a little bit about your story and then how you got hired by Planned Parenthood.
Right. And I'm just going to go on. Okay. So at any point, if you have questions, just interrupt me, please. I'm Mexican and I tend to go on and on and on and on and on. We make short stories long, not the other way. Okay. So I came to this beautiful country when I was about 18 years of age. And my desire since I was a little kid was to be a doctor in my country. Obviously, that changed a little when I'm in a foreign country, right? I had a visa, but still, it's expensive to go to college, especially for med school. So I had a diploma as a lab technician. I was doing some restaurant work. My friend worked for this wonderful organization that they help women, right? And one day she goes, "Why don't you come work with me? They need people who speak Spanish and they help women." And I'm like, jackpot, right? If they need people, it's to help my own community. And if they help women, I want to help women. Who doesn't want to help women? That sounds very pretty, right? So I said, yeah, of course. Yeah, why not? If they give me a job, right? They're like, yeah, I talked to them about your background, your diploma from Mexico. My diploma was from Mexico as a medical lab technician, and they were on board. And basically, the job was already mine. I just had to show up to that interview. When I came to the interview, specifically one lady, right? And I park, and as I'm crossing the street to go to the building, she says, "Don't go in there. I can help you." Well, I rushed in, right? Because I'm like, why would she be doing that and saying that, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm a Mexican immigrant that has been in this country for 5 years, but knew very little about Planned Parenthood or abortion. Even my friend didn't mention much about abortion because she worked for the other side. Okay. This is back when Planned Parenthood had very well divided their sides and called one side the good side, the 93%, and then the 7% of their services was the non-important one, supposedly back then.
Mhm.
So I went into the interview. Of course, I asked that HR lady, "What is that lady doing?" She's just praying, nothing else to do, and just like some of the stuff we do, you're not allowed to interact with them if you work for us or even exchange words, right? That will be an immediate termination. So there goes that,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Already telling you that you're not supposed to talk to them. And then she said, "So what do you think about abortion?" And then I said, "Well, I wouldn't have one. You know, I thought I answered like a great Christian person. I wouldn't have
Mhm.
one. But if someone else does, that's up to them. That's between them and God. Who am I here to judge them, right?" But I knew abortion was wrong for my own children. And basically, why did I think it was wrong for me? I had had a miscarriage, and it was the most painful thing I have ever gone through. And I was very young. I was about 22, 23, already a miscarriage, and it was really painful. So the thought of being having an abortion was not crossing my mind, and I was not raised that way. But of course, if someone else does it, who am I to judge them, right? As a Christian, that's not what God expects from me. So I thought, right? And she liked the answer. So I got
Right.
the job. And I started working on the preventive side of Planned Parenthood because I quickly, right? And she said, no, now you were hired for the other side, right? Because even then, they knew they had a different side. And I was like, right, because as much as I don't know, like I want to be part of it, right? I'm still a good Christian, right? I'm a good Catholic person. Why would I want
Right.
to be part of that? Right? And I started working on the preventive side, the birth control, the STDs, that side that even up to date, some conservatives say, well, they do kind of some good stuff. I have heard so many of them say that to me, conservatives against abortion still say, well, but if we defund them, shouldn't we be hurting more the pro-life movement because they won't give birth control? And it's like, wait a minute. I was working for that side and I became really good at my job. And, for the beginning of my conversion years, I made excuses like, well, I worked 16 years on the other side. I had nothing to do with abortion for 16 years until one day I'm like, nah, it had everything to do with that because I became really good at selling abortion, right? I became really, really good at selling women that abortion was their best choice. What do I mean by that? The majority of women that came to
Yeah.
these preventive sites, they came for a pregnancy test, but they were abortion minded. Come on. Women that are not abortion minded don't walk into Planned Parenthood. They go to a real OBGYN, like we call them, right? They don't walk
Mhm.
to Planned Parenthood. So we knew they were there because most likely they were looking for an abortion. So I became really good at convincing. And that's how my story begins.
So is that what they tell you and teach you at Planned Parenthood, that if they come into their clinic, they're looking for abortion, which that's not always the case. They're going in there for, they think they're going to get counseling, they're going to get choices, they're going to get other options. I know very few women who went into a Planned Parenthood clinic because that's what they were going to do. Now they do, there are some, but but I know many others who weren't going there for an abortion, but for
No,
counseling.
I was trained.
But they were counseled to have an
Right.
abortion.
No, I
Yeah.
was trained to see every patient walking there was always an abortion minded woman, right? If they're here, it's because they know we do that, right? So they know we do that. It's
Mm,
because that's mainly their idea. All we have to do is literally upsell it, but obviously that's not what they say, right? So it's not like we sat in the training rooms and they say that with those words. Of course not. Like everything else they do, they code everything with syrup, I like to say, right? With sugar to make it sound pretty and sweet, right? And I'm just gonna give you a quick example. So a woman, right, that is walking in for a pregnancy test, and the way we're trained is, if that woman tells you, well, I wanted to get pregnant, so I'm good with being pregnant, so or she sounds happy, or she's like, oh, this is good, this is a good news, right? Don't waste her time. You see that? Don't waste her time, and you're like, oh, okay, because there's nothing else we can do for her. So just tell her, give them the resources, right, and move on to the next patient, right? So they make it seem that you're helping her by not spending more time with her so you can move on to the patients where you need to spend time with because there's nothing else we can do for her, right? So why would I waste her time with me sitting in a room, right? Like there's nothing I can do for you. We don't do prenatal care. Here's the list of resources. Good luck and goodbye, right? But they don't tell you that way, right? They sugarcoat it. They make it sound that they're concerned about the woman and her time, and that's why you shouldn't waste her time, right? But in the reality is don't waste the time of the clients that because there's nothing we can offer.
Yeah.
But spend time on the ones where you can explain our services. Same thing with adoption. Well, there's some agencies that can help you with that. Here you go. Goodbye. They even when the state passed a law that you had to talk to them about all three choices, the way it was trained was by law, I have to tell you your three options. So
ah,
you can continue a pregnancy. Here's your resources. You can do an adoption. Here's your resources. But if you decide to do an abortion, let me tell you about that. We
Wow.
offer, and then you explain the business,
Mm,
safe,
right?
quick. It does, get your life back to normal. There's no consequences. It's the easy, like they sell it as the easiest choice they can make
mm,
Exactly.
because they don't make any money on adoption referrals or women keeping their children.
mhm, mm.
Exactly. Exactly. I bet that if they came into a contract with an adoption agency and they contract to get money out of the referrals, but because they don't make money, they don't care.
Right.
Mm,
Yeah.
right.
And even those
Mm,
women who are uh, coming in and they're of course they're in a crisis situation, but they don't know what to do. They want to know what their options are, and they're upset. They're always going to be encouraged to have an abortion. Am I correct?
Exactly. This example of if I became so good at selling abortions that I could convince almost any woman that this is the right choice for her, right?
Mm.
That this was the
mhm,
lesser evil, right? To the point that you call it love, like to a woman that has multiple children, right? She already had a baby. She knows what she feels being pregnant. She knows what it feels when the baby kicks. She knows it's a baby inside her because she had children already. But you tell her, she's there because she's struggling, right? Because she's struggling probably in her marriage and her situation, and then you quickly switch like, but if you love your family, if you love those children, if you don't want to make that baby
mhm,
suffer like
mhm.
the rest of your children or bring into the situation you're in, the best thing out of love that you can do is kill it, right? Like
Wow.
have an abortion,
Wow.
terminate your pregnancy, love your family better, dedicate to your family and dedicate to yourself, right? Like self-care. Always that word that
Yeah.
they make it seem that caring for your children are not caring for yourself, right? Like you just
Wow.
giving yourself
This
away.
just Yeah, this just keeps coming to my mind. I always go spiritually with this because Satan is the father of lies. He's the master of manipulation, especially when it comes to language and wording and convincing. And so to me, it's all pure demonic, pure evil when you call something evil good, call something like call killing an act of love. And so it's not anything on you, Myra, or even the
No,
people who work for Planned Parenthood, because they can be deceived too.
Yeah.
you know we can all be deceived, but that's why we're here, is to expose the lies and bring truth and bring hope and healing for those who were deceived, like myself. But I'm sorry, go ahead. It just kind of takes me
no,
there,
and you're right.
when I'm hearing how you
And you
know
are absolutely right. Because I was trained to go into my community. Remember, I started working for them because I'm helping my community. They need people who speak Spanish to
Mhm.
go into the Hispanic community. And obviously, Margaret Sanger trained them really good, right? Remember, when she started, hire Black people
right,
to serve the Black community so they will feel at home. So Planned Parenthood keeps doing the
Yes.
same thing.
right,
So as a
Mhm.
Hispanic Latina, I went into the communities and then they trained me to go train and talk to these women and liberate them from the kitchen, right? Like Hispanic women don't care about themselves. They don't take good care of them. They just burden, doing whatever their husband tells them. It's our responsibility to bring the light to them, right? The light.
Mhm.
Like they're just being slaves in the kitchen, right? And imagine that I'm here, I am training and going into the communities and telling women how to hide birth control from your husband, how to hide an abortion from your husband. You don't need your
Mhm.
permission. It's your
wow,
body, it's your choice. He has
Wow.
nothing to say. It's the opposite of a marriage, right?
Mhm.
Because when those two people decided to be together, get married, or form a family, it became a compromise that they will not lie to each other, right? That they will be faithful to each other. But here is this movement telling women that you can hide from your husband.
Mhm.
Your husband cannot hide anything
mm,
from you, but you can
Yeah.
hide your birth control
yeah,
from your husband. You can hide the abortion
wow,
from your husband. Even training
Mhm.
women how to disguise their abortion, right? Like, well, you don't have
wow,
to tell them you took the abortion pill. You can just tell them you miscarriage. No one has to know what you're going through. And again, making it seem that this is something positive for them, right? Because you don't want to
it's
be judged
good,
by others. Why are they going to tell you? Have issues. You can just
Right.
tell them your miscarriage. Everyone will feel sorry for you, right? And no one will know.
mm,
But in
So Myra,
reality, they
wow,
don't want
so
them to know.
so Myra, it's what you're saying. You're just describing then how you were, in a sense, you were taught to manipulate the women coming into the center. Was there a time
and make it all sound
Mhm.
good.
And make it seem like it's a valuable and plausible option? What was the turning point for you? What happened?
Yeah,
I'm glad you asked because probably the audience is like, I'm waiting to see when this woman became good. So, after doing that for so many years, getting that Employee of the Year award, that came with a proposition that I was not expecting, which was a promotion to them, right? I didn't took it as a
Mhm.
promotion, which is becoming the director of the abortion facility. That quickly brings the blindness off, right? I started seeing, the truth. For example, I told women abortion were safe, right? Like there's hardly any issues. 18% of them have complications, 20% of it complications, nothing happens, right? And then what was I seeing? Women getting hurt daily. I'm not talking about once a week, maybe one client out of the 500 they saw a week. No, I'm talking every day women left hurt, but only emotionally, but physically. I'm describing the physical damage of abortion, which it was the perforation that I witnessed. And most of the time, the abortions didn't even notice or didn't even care, right? But it's those phone calls weeks after, I'm still bleeding and cramping horribly, right? But it is those records that came from the in the fax machine where the emergency room say, "Hey, we saw a patient of yours, and it was a perforated uterus that we repaired." Right? Always the emergency room cleaning up their mess. Right? It's the phone calls.
Mhm.
That abortion pill lady that I told her, it's like taking Tylenol. 2 days of
Mhm.
bleeding like a period. You'll be fine. And then what it looked like, those phone calls of women saying, I think I'm gonna die. I'm bleeding so much and cramping so much. This is very painful. And hearing them cry and being trained to tell them, put your feet up, get a heating pad, take ibuprofen, call me back in the morning. Right? And then
Ah.
wow,
trying to tell women,
mm,
when you feel that big blood clot, push it out on the toilet and you'll be okay. That's it. It's done. I filled the clot to push out in the toilet. Either I didn't make it, and it's not a clot though. It looks like a baby. Push it out on the toilet and flush it. Or you want me to flush the baby in the toilet? Can you imagine the trauma
Mm.
on that young woman? And
Yes,
then it was
we've
the
heard
incomplete abortions where he left baby for,
Mhm.
mm,
right? You have heard it. I didn't, right? Why? Because no woman called me 3 weeks later, hey, Mayra, my abortion. That never happened.
Mhm.
Out of the 17 years I worked for Planned Parenthood, not a single woman
Wow.
closed that door to thank me for that abortion. So when they say women
That's
are thankful for the
yeah.
abortion, I have never seen a woman come back and say, "Hey, thank you." You know, when you have been diagnosed with
Mm.
something and your doctor took really good care of you, most of the time people are so grateful they go back, bring cookies, flowers, something to the office, right? On their
Yeah.
follow up or something, right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
So
if women were so
yeah.
thankful, they
And
would
there's
come
no
back.
aftercare. You know, yeah, like you were saying, there's no aftercare for women from at Planned Parenthood. It's no longer our problem. If you're hemorrhaging, you go somewhere else. If you're whatever, if you're having issues, you go somewhere else. You're not my problem anymore. I've heard time again, and that's kind of what your bio was saying, that how Planned Parenthood treats women and their employees. They
Mhm.
really don't care about you at all. They just want your money and they don't want to be bothered with anything else. Am I correct in that?
I started complaining about the abortionist, and I'm gonna tell you, I thought I was gonna get another employee. I was doing my job.
Mhm.
I'm complaining about the abortionists. I'm
Mhm.
telling them what's wrong at the center. For sure, I'm getting the 2017 Employee of the Year award. But no, I actually got the Enemy of the Year award because I got fired right after complaining of the abortionist leaving the baby head inside a 19-year-old woman. This is a
Mhm.
14-week baby.
Uh,
I know your audience and probably you both know that it happens through dismemberment of the babies. No matter how many times they say we lie,
Mhm.
abortions are done. It is true. They dismember those babies part by part and then puzzle them back together in a room and throw them in Ziploc bags. And in this case, he left the baby head of 14 weeks, inserted an IUD, which is an intrauterine device, as a little T of copper. It's a 19-year-old. The assistant came to my office and said, I already told him that I can find the head. He doesn't care. He's leaving. That's because he left the big case for the end of the day in case something goes wrong. It didn't disrupt the rest of his patients, right? So
Mm.
I went back there. She was like, he's going to fire me, but I can't. This is an MA, a medical assistant, brought that to my attention. She has no more medical background than what, like a certification of a 9-month program, 1 year top.
Wow.
But he was an OBGYN, supposed to know what happens if you can find the head and insert it an IUD. Didn't care. He was ready to go home. So I went to the back. We argued, finally agreed. We repeated an ultrasound and we found the head above the IUD. I remember that day I laughed. I called my supervisor and said, That's it. That's it. Either you do something, but since I've been complaining, nothing has happened. I'm going to do something. I'm going to the health department. I'm going to the
Mhm.
medical board. I'm going wherever I need to go. Few days later, I got called into a meeting and it's like, Mayra, you're fired. By now I was managing 3 centers, and they said that in one of those centers where I had not been at, they found narcotics on my desk, which are used on patients. So the million
Oh.
dollar question is, was there ever narcotics on my desk? We will never know. I knew it was a setup.
yes. So you reported that you were seeing medical malpractice, actually is what it is. And you reported that to your supervisors. Instead of getting rewarded and thanked and him being dealt with, you were fired, and then you filed a wrongful termination because you're basically a whistleblower because you did report that right to HHS. Did anything come from that investigation? Did they do anything?
Nothing. I knew at that moment we
Mm.
knew, the corruption is bigger than it's
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Yes.
The
And they
Mhm.
corruption.
yeah, they have the money and they have the attorneys and they have the power. I mean, I just read an article today that we, as taxpayers gave them a 13% raise. We're giving them over 700 what million dollars a year to Planned Parenthood, which we are working to defund them. And I'm trying to rush through here because we only have a few minutes left. So you're a pro-life speaker, you're a pro-life advocate, you're
Mhm.
exposing the wickedness of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. But then you got invited to speak to uh, a pro-life march in Canada. Can you tell us about that real quick?
Well, I've been very grateful to go globally to many parts of the world. And in Canada, I didn't know what to expect, right? Like it could be 20, 30. But to my surprise, it was hundreds of people, especially Summit, right? I was speaking at Youth Summit, which is the next morning after the march. And that room was full and packed. When that happens in a country like Canada, when we think everything has been lost, right? That
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
think here that no one, but then we see all those strong warriors not giving up. It's like we're never gonna give up either. When you see people in California not giving up, like
Mhm.
this, the areas that abortion is more weak, strongest abortion, anti-abortion, pro-life defenders, and
Ah,
that always fills my
beautiful.
spirit. And I cannot give up. I won that lawsuit, but I knew that that was just the first step in my story because Planned Parenthood continues to do business and will get him defunded this time.
Amen.
Yes, let
Amen.
it go. Yes,
And
yes.
that is what we must do. I remember the Lord gave me a prophetic word years ago when I was speaking at a pro-life rally in Austin, Texas. And that, it was like basically we have to bring Planned Parenthood down because they're really the leading abortion provider in the country and even around the world. And I said, we don't just bring them down, we've got to cut off their ugly head. And I don't know exactly what that means, but to me, it's completely destroy them so that they can never be raised and resurrected again. They need to be destroyed for the wicked industry that they are. They've inflicted so much harm on women and families and communities, destroying the basic foundation of families by destroying life. And so I appreciate you, Myra, for coming out
Mhm.
and sharing your truth with us and really just informing our audience about who they really are. They're not there to help women. They're not compassionate. They're full of lies and deception in order to make money. And then the more money they make, the more powerful they are to hire attorneys to fight your case and those kind of things, to get elected officials, to get officials elected to office. And then these officials have to do their bidding in order to keep their money from Planned Parenthood. So it's just nothing but a wicked organization. And Mary and I and you and others are dedicated to exposing that.
Yes. I
Hmm.
was
I mean,
I
and
was just
that's
doing the
true.
numbers.
Hmm.
I was
Thank
doing the numbers because you said I think one clinic had 500, saw 500 patients a week.
week.
That in
For abortion.
17 years, that was 102,000 abortions just in the one clinic. I
Wow.
think it's so telling that not one person called to say thank you they because they were deceived into thinking this was an okay. We had a previous guest who called it moral injury when there's a betrayal of what is right. So we know intuitively that it's wrong. But even though Planned Parenthood and big abortion and the cultural narrative is that this is right, this is okay, this is your choice.
Yeah.
So I am so thankful that you're exposing what they did, and I'm glad you had. I just want to thank you for standing up to them.
Yes.
Interesting, this young woman comes to you and said, he put the IUD in, and we don't have the head,
Mm.
and you have to force him to do an ultrasound, and then he had to deal with it. I'm sure he was upset because he was trying to get out the door. That is so. It's reminding me of the David Daleiden story, the baby parts. Did you see any of that? The harvesting of baby parts?
We didn't have that in Arizona back then, but now bring abortion in the Constitution, I'm sure that anything goes, right? Because unfortunately,
Mhm.
when people were voting, and this is the part, they other side so deceiving that it buys them with lies. It did with me. I like what you have in your background, Molly, because I was deceived and now I have been delivered.
Yes, ma'am.
I truly believe the lies. I truly believe women
Yeah.
were going to be better. I really honestly, in my heart, in my fantasy world, imagine them having a good life after that.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
It's all based on deception. And it's so
Yeah.
good to be on the other side. It's so good to be walking in the truth and exposing those lies, because our desire, all of us here and many others, is to see wounded women and men and families healed from that trauma of abortion. And even abortion workers, there's deliverance for you, there's healing for you. There's a better life for you outside of the abortion industry, and we invite you to come out of that and to seek what the healing the Lord has for you, and the blessings that the Lord has for you. And for women and men who've had abortions in your past, and if you've gone through recovery, use your voice. Use your voice. There's such power in
Mhm.
testimony, and we need those testimonies. So you can contact operationoutcry.org to learn how to be an activist and to use your voice. We also have Myra's contact information on our screen. If you would like to invite her to come and
Mhm.
speak, it's Myra at myrarodriguez.org. And we just invite you to get her out there and invite her to speak. So thank you. I'm sorry to rush through this, but we are at the end of our time. But thank
Yes.
you so much, Myra, for coming on and being with us today. We're truly grateful, and thank you all for tuning in to watching me and Mary on More to the Story with
Yes.
Molly White. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
God bless you. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye.
Woo wee.